Well, hello and welcome everybody. My name is Dattu, and today I have the honor and privilege to interview my dear friend, the creator of this beautiful podcast called Let's Talk Horses, Miss Sarah Watt. Welcome.
He's taken over, people. He's taking control. Thank
I'm
you.
here.
This is fun.
This really, it's been so amazing to have seen everything that you've created with this. I think what started off as an idea, like your commitment to this podcast, the number of the numerous people that you've interviewed and the different conversations that you've had, and it's like, well, let me ask you some questions. So how are you doing, Sarah? I know that you've just finished recording one podcast and that was about horses, and then you're back on another one. Like, what's going on?
Well, I could talk about horses all day. And the reason I love this podcast is the connection that horses have, or the connection horses create between people is so amazing. So it's funny. I just finished recording an episode with Connor Hill that goes live today. So it's being posted by my staff behind the scenes. That's all happening right now. And I just laughed with you because then we had this one scheduled. This one will come out next week. Because sometimes I have some in the bank and sometimes I get a bit behind with my schedule. So we just record them as we go. But you're going to see me wearing the same outfit for 2 episodes in a row because I was like, I couldn't even be bothered getting changed. So that's kind of a little bit about the behind the scenes of these episodes. But honestly, Dattu, I could talk about horses all day, every day. And the thing that I love is, I had Connor on. He's a conscious horse, conscious rider facilitator. I try and have a bit of a plan for these episodes, but they really go where they go. And it's not really a structured thing. It is just bringing the joy of horses to the world and being able to have a conversation about how these amazing creatures have contributed to and impacted our lives. So yeah, and I'm starting to have some guests on now that aren't. So I really started the podcast to get the tools of access consciousness and conscious horse, conscious rider out there. And now I'm starting to have some guests on that aren't in our realm or our field of what this is. So that's exciting too, because it brings in a different energy and a different conversation with people. But what I love is it doesn't matter where you live or your age, your anything, your income, your sex, your religion. It's like horses will bring everyone together across the seas. I had a guy on my show last week who is quite a famous horse trainer in America. And I was like, this girl sitting over here in Australia talking to this American horse trainer. Like, I just love that about horses because they're a real connector of people. So yeah, how did I get so lucky to be able to do this? Yeah, I'm very grateful.
Absolutely. And like, I'd actually like to start with the signature question that you ask all your guests that come on your show, which is, Sarah Watt, how did horses come into your life? And if you can tell us a little bit about, like, if you were to like piece it together. I know you've spoken about it before, but if you were to kind of start all over.
No one's ever asked me that. So it's like, that's so cool. This is like, I feel like the guest on my own podcast. It's amazing. Let me think of the first one. I mean, I have some very early memories and I kind of get muddled of the order that they came in, but one very clear one, I don't know. I think I was born a little bit obsessed with horses, but I never had horses in my life. I mean, I was born on the Sunshine Coast here in Queensland, Australia, which is, there's definitely rural properties and stuff around the Sunshine Coast, but I was born at the beach. Like, my life as a child revolved around being at the beach. I grew up always within 5 to 10 minutes drive or walk from the beach. My mum met my stepdad when I was quite young, maybe 9 years old or something like that. And he was a surfer. So we were always surfing. We were always at the beach. But there was just this burning inside me to be on the land. Like, I just always I love animals. I've always been an animal lover. Like, I was the sort of kid, if you were looking for me, I'd be sitting in the dirt with the dogs or playing with like whatever animals were around. But I didn't really have exposure to horses, but there was just something in my world. Whenever I saw them, I used to keep magazines and books of them. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, because it's not like anyone in my family was into horses. Like, no one in my family. But I do remember we were away at a family friend's house and he had a horse, and I was like, oh my God. And so they said, we're going to organize so you kids, me and my brother and my sister, could ride this horse. And it was like the most amazing and exhilarating moment. And I had no idea what I was doing. And this guy plopped me up on this horse, and he had it on a lunge lead and lunged me around him while I was on this horse. And we were trotting and cantering because he obviously was like, oh, I'll use this to my advantage. I've got someone that can sit on the horse and ride it while I lunge it around. And I was just like, I was sold. I was like, that's it. I don't care what it takes. I need to have these animals in my life. So it took me many, many, many years before I actually had a horse of my own, but I always managed to pull them into my life, to have them around in some way or another. Even if I was a bit annoying, I didn't care. I was like, if there's a horse and there's any way I can be near it, I don't care if I offend people. I'm just going to make it happen. So, yeah.
Wow. You said something about like pulling them into your life. Like for those of you listening, the beginning of this year, February, I did have the amazing experience of coming and visiting you in the beautiful property that you call home, where you literally live with horses. And I know a little bit about your story as to how you actually started with like actually creating your entire reality, and you managed to literally pull in two physical horses into your house. And can you tell us about like what have you learned about creating your life and creating your reality, and how have horses kind of contributed to that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I would say the energy of pulling something into your life. Like there's so many modalities out there that talk about this, like manifestation, and like there's a lot of different ways that people have this thing of like actualizing their dreams. And you know, even a few days ago, Dattu, I really needed to acknowledge how much I've created a life of my dreams. Like as a kid, as I said, I grew up on the coast. We were poor. We were really poor when I was a kid. I mean, I remember my clothes always were from the thrift shop, the secondhand shop. I wore hand-me-downs from any relative that would gift me clothes. Like everything in our family life was on a really shoestring budget. Like I grew up with a mum who worked like all the time. We were home. We kind of worked on raising ourselves. Myself, my brother, and my sister took care of ourselves from a very young age. And I was talking to my sister about it today, actually, because I was like, considering the childhood we have, all three of us, myself, her, and my brother, have created really phenomenal lives. And I kind of stopped the other day because it's so interesting. I still have those days where I'm like, this isn't good enough. Money, my body, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, Sarah, are you serious? Like and my horses are a big part of that, because they have been an absolute dream, a fantasy I would have thought as a child. I never would have dreamt I would have a house with two horses. And this is really the beginning, because there's so many more stories about where I plan to go on my horse journey next. Like this is still the very beginning of that. So I would say acknowledge the places where you've created the things that you were asking for. But then there's this energy or this tool that I've learned through Access Consciousness, where it's almost like make a demand of yourself and then a request of the universe. So it's almost like there was always a demand in my world from a very young age. And I didn't cognitize it back then. You would call it an obsession. You would call it a fantasy. Like there'd be so many ways to describe it. But I think really now I look at it, I've always had a demand that these animals and the energy that horses are, me and that we had a future together. And I mean, I'm in my early 40s now. It's not like I was born into horses and I've had horses. I've had to work really hard to create this. But I think it's really having that demand of something in your world that is a non-negotiable in life. And that you could have many of somethings. Like there's a lot of other things I have that I've also demanded to have. But it's this place where I've demanded it of myself, but then you request of the universe. And that's the question of like, hey, and whatever that could be called manifestation or like, visualization or all that sort of stuff. But it's really that place where then you so know that this thing needs to be a part of your life. And then you open yourself up to the magic of the universe and you start to listen to the whispers of where the possibilities lie that match that energy, that match that demand. And that's, if I looked back over my life and I wrote it out as a map, it would be that I just constantly followed the whispers towards my demand, which was to have horses with me. And, I had Ollie, my gelding, with me at one stage for a year. I found a property that I could have him at. But now I've lived at this property for 2 years, and I'm about to buy a property. I'm in the process now of actually being able to buy something of my own, along with my partner, Hayden, not all of my own, but kind of my own still, where I can have my horses and more horses, and I will be having a lot more horses. Trust me, I'm already like, how many horses can I fit? Yeah, it's really this thing of like, and that's just one small part of my life. My whole life has been, a work in progress, and I've worked really hard at it, but it's also literally like I live in my childhood dream. So yeah, I don't know if I really answered you, but
you did, and then you did, and you did it so beautifully. And it was actually that, like, like, just to kind of also share with everyone that's listening a little bit of like a background as to, like, I met you in a position where we were working with Access and creating events. And one of the things that I saw was the sense of clarity and a very different sense of space of leadership that you functioned with when it came to creating these huge ass events in different parts of the world. And one of the things that then, like, following the whispers, like, you kind of, it was your obsession with horses and what you knew with horses. And I was part of the conscious horse, conscious rider class in India. And it showed me something beautiful. And like, I now can extrapolate and like really connect the dots and be like, wow, I mean, the horses and leadership, I'm sure. Can you tell us, like, what have you learned about horses, leadership, and having that simplicity and clarity with what's required to kind of create your life?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Because also to acknowledge just how much they've taught me so much. And I think probably sometimes I haven't really realized just how much, if you're willing to learn from them, because you think, conscious horse, conscious rider classes, people are like, well, why would I do a horse class? I mean, I'm not interested in riding horses. Cool, they're beautiful, they're great animals, but why would I do a class on horses? But honestly, if you let them teach you, the way that they function is really, I think, what we strive for as people. Like, how many of us out there are striving to have, just to wake up and have a sense of peace and calm in your world, to just have a quietness and a peace in your world, no matter what's going on. I mean, as you said, I'm a worldwide coordinator on Access Consciousness events. There's a lot going on in my world, but most of the time I function from a space where there's a lot of peace in my life. Judgment, like, how many of us desire to judge less, judge ourselves, judge other people? Time, how many of us desire to not be a slave to the clock, to not be a slave to your to-do list? How many of us desire to lead through example, lead through strength, lead through not using force? I mean, these are all of the things that horses be in the world. Like, it's literally like everything that I think we really deep down desire to be as people, horses have the capacity and very much the willingness to show that to us, to show what's possible to have a life like that. And that's what I love about them so much. I mean, even, my 2 horses that live here with me, it's like constantly having 2 facilitators in your backyard. Like, and, some days I just feed them and clean their feet, or, tidy their paddock up a little bit. It's not like every day we're riding and doing all of this stuff, but every time I'm around them, they're constantly inviting me to be more of that space, I think, that we all desire to have in this world. That we live in this tumultuous time, this crazy world where there's always sometimes you're just like, seriously, like, you hear something and you're like, really, that's what we're choosing? But you watch horses and they thrive on this planet because they have a very innate capacity to thrive, to gear towards being a creature that thrives. I think they live on pretty much every continent on this planet. Horses exist there. And you know, they're at the bottom of the food chain. They're a prey animal. Everything wants to eat them, but they have this real adept ability to thrive on this planet. And I think that's what they're here to teach us in a way. Not just that, but I honestly think they're here to really show us our true capacities and our true strengths and what's truly possible on this planet if we're willing to listen to them, I guess. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And one of the one of the things that I think most people that I know, including myself, when I was first introduced to like the idea of being around a horse, was this whole thing around fear. And I know you've spoken about this quite a lot of times on your podcast. You just spoke about capacities a while ago. And then there's this fear or this thing which we know is a lie that's in the way. So can you share with us like what your experience has been with fear and horses and people actually overcoming that and like really getting to have a taste of what their capacities can be?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people think something is fear, but I often find when people are around horses and they have a fear, for me, it's almost like what they're actually afraid of is if they let that animal in and they almost succumb to, it sounds a little bit significant, but it's almost like if they just drop their walls and barriers and succumb to that animal, like to give themselves up and be like, I am here, I'm just going to be me. There's something that horses will just strip every part away from you and get to the very core of you as a being in a way that people can't. We never let people into that degree until we do. I mean, sometimes we do, but if you're willing to allow a horse into that deep space within you, and you in turn step into that deep space within them, it kind of becomes this, I don't know, it's not really replicated anywhere else in the world. So, I mean, when people talk to me about fear, I'm like, well, are you afraid, or is there actually such a level of like excitement to know that there's a communion available with this animal that, you know, they're much, much bigger than us, and they don't talk to us. They don't tell us what's going on. They demand us to be present with them in that moment. And they just demand more of us. And I think that's what we're afraid of, is to actually show up as all of us. And you're with a horse and the horse is like, well, look, I don't care if you don't choose that, but if you're willing to, I will invite you to be every ounce, every molecule of yourself in every moment. And I think that can be a little bit frightening, because most of us work very hard at hiding ourselves. Most of us work very hard to present an image of ourselves to the world. And we do that because we've needed to do it to survive, to thrive. Like, it's our way of thrival, is to really actually pile a whole bunch of shit on top of ourselves to hide as much of us as possible. Whereas horses are the complete opposite. They've learned to thrive through being such a big energy in every moment. And I think that can be a little bit confronting. And I think that's really what most people's fear of with horses is, actually exposing themselves as who they truly are, and having this creature in front of them that has no judgment and no point of view of who or what that is. They will see you, warts and all. They don't care about your problems. They just demand of us to be more of us. And I think that can be a little bit frightening for some people. So I guess, you know, it's always a choice, but most of the time when you're around horses, if you're willing to let them in that way, they really only want to do it to show you to be more and to have more of yourself. So, yeah.
And it is such it's such an experiential, I think, process. Like, to put words to it is like trying to explain how I think the universe works. And I'm really here to share my experience with actually the intro you did in New Delhi, which I remember was actually one of the first times in my adult life when I was on a horse. And, you know, it was that trust exercise, or, you know, it was where I was willing to kind of like literally, like, my back was against the horse's spinal cord and I was lying down. And then I remember that there was this fear, and then there was this moment of like really letting go, and like truly something changed. Like, it almost felt like there was this ocean of energy that was willing to welcome and receive without an iota of judgment of who I am. And subsequently, what did occur after that, and I must acknowledge, my body changed. Like there was a sense of like I lost a bunch of weight. And then I remember, like, one of the things that I do remember that you did massively contribute to changing this was with that experience with the horse. And it's one of those, I still have a picture of that on my phone, and I look at it, and it's one of those experiences that I really can't really, I mean, it's something that I still receive from. So it's super experiential. And it's like, thank you actually for having opened up that for someone like me who I never thought would really get on a horse or like, be there. So
yeah. Well, thank you for choosing it. And I love that you said how the universe works, because it's interesting. I just did a one-day class here at my house like a week and a half ago, and this was sort of one of the things that came up, because when you're with horses, energy is our first language, right? And that's something we share with horses. It's something we share with the planet, with all of the critters and the creatures and nature, everything that occupies this planet. The one thing that we share with each other is energy, because that's what we're made up of. We're all made of the same things. We show up in different ways, but at our essence, we are creatures of energy. And I think that's, I was talking about it in the Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider class, because that's actually how the universe works. But we're not taught that. We're taught to use words. We're taught to judge. We're taught to present ourselves as an image. We're taught all of these things that move us the furthest away from our true state of being, which is energy, which is how the universe actually works, which I think is what I talked about at the beginning of this podcast, and what I love about the Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider classes and horses in general is, I think one of their big, the reason we connect with them so well is because they're great teachers at bringing us back, quote unquote, to that place that is at the essence of all of us, which is that we are just like them and the universe. We're creatures of energy. And when you're willing to hone your energetic skills, your energetic ear, your energetic voice, quote unquote, it's like you start to perceive the world very differently, and you start to become way more aware of what's truly going on, rather than sort of this image that this reality has created for us to live by. Like all of the things that we're presented with in this reality are so far from the truth a lot of the time, that I think being around horses, for me, that's been the biggest gift, is to draw me back to the core of who I am, which I talked about as well, which is what they step into, and what we can get quite afraid of, or it shows up as fear for us, is their real ability to bring us back to our roots, I want to say, to the core of what we are, which is, creatures of the universe, just like them, creatures of energy. And, it doesn't mean going full woo-woo and going off the Richter scale and becoming like a horse person that lives in the forest and never talks again. Like I love my home. I love flying business class. I love beautiful clothes. Like I love the fact that I'm a person, because we get to enjoy so much of the hedonistic aspects of life. So it's not about giving any of that up, but it's really this place of creating your life from an energetic space, rather than believing everything that is being told around us. And horses have invited me to so much of that, to really create my reality and my world. I feel like I'm more of a horse than a person. And I think that it sounds weird, but I think it's actually such a gift. And I think it's another thing that the Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider classes can invite us to, is just, I don't even know how to sort of put it into words, because it kind of sounds weird, but to tap into our horse energy, like to tap into this space where, like I said at the start, we don't function as these brains on legs, that we actually start to change and be a bit more in touch with the energies of the universe. So I feel like I'm on like 10 million tangents right now.
No, but like actually segueing this into like really one of the things that I'm super curious about, and like one of the things that really gets me excited about my work with exploring more consciousness, is this knowing that the more there's artificial and the more there's tech and the more there's these other things that's really controlling or trying to control, there's this beam of light, almost like, without making it significant, where there are more and more people waking up to knowing that there's more, knowing that, hey, your being actually gets to win, like consciousness gets to win. And to know that horses kind of invite you to that, and horses kind of like bring that forth. Like, what are you aware of with like horse activity around the world, in terms of like, have you seen any changes in terms of, are people more open to the idea? Are people from more urban cities kind of like, what's that been like for you?
Well, I think a lot of people, there's a couple of things there. I think a lot of people believe that horses are a bit inaccessible, or like it's like this separation that we've sort of created. And, Dattu, it's not to make horses the answer either, because there are so many, I love your example of, I think the world is, it's this real starting to shift thing. There's a lot more technology and control and these different components coming into place. And like you said, a lot of people are starting to realize that and be like, does that actually work for me? And is that the kind of future and reality I'm looking for? For me, I think horses are a huge invitation to a different reality, and they've helped me create a reality of my own that is very different to what the mainstream and what this reality tells us we should live like. But there's probably a bunch of things out there that will give you a similar
experience.
And set of ingredients to create your reality. Like, I mean, the big thing that access consciousness has taught me, and this meandering path of consciousness that I'm on, is really to always be in question about everything. And it just so happens that horses, for me, are such a contribution, but it could be one of many other things for people out there. So if you're kind of like, horses are cool, yep, I would invite everyone in the world to a conscious horse, conscious rider class. But I would also say, just always ask a question. Like, and even when you're presented with something, or even if it's something you've believed to be true your whole entire life, be willing to be like, you know what? Is this true for me? Like, is this actually something that fits the reality that I desire to create? So what I would say is, like, start creating your reality. And if horses can contribute to that, look, I'm going to be the first person that says you should have that as a contribution. But first and foremost, explore consciousness, explore pushing the boundaries of the things that you've been told are true in this world. Ask questions, question everything, question. Now, when we talk about horses, we have had a bond with these animals that has spanned as long as evolution has put us, like, whatever you believe, the horse body and the person body, we hit this evolutionary, we presented at around the same time. Horses became horses, people became people, kind of around the same time. People have probably been around a little bit longer. But then we formed this relationship with these creatures where they've taken us into battle. We have conquered nations. We have destroyed nations. We have built, civilizations alongside these creatures over literally, over a century of time. A long time we've been together, and we've worked as this really cool unit. So I'm also like, the thing I love about access consciousness in general, and the conscious horse, conscious rider classes is, to me, it feels like everything we've done so far has been amazing, but now what is possible? Like, it's almost like the similar energy with what you've said about where we are on a technological level, or a human, like a human race, like where the human race is at the moment. We're in a time where it could go either way here, right? Like, we're kind of like, shit could get pretty messy here at any time. Like, we lived through 2 years of something we've never seen in the history of the world, where the world literally was shut down, and it affected people in so many different ways. Like, we live in a time where you kind of like, truly anything is possible. So I'm like, rather than buying into the doom and gloom side of things of that, I'm like, truly what else is possible from like this, like, opening up to a new level of something that's available, the magic, consciousness, whatever it is for you. And for me, and when I bring horses into that, it's like, Whoa, we've worked together for over a century to become where we are now. Now, what's the next 100 years going to look like? Like, what can we create with these creatures next that we've never even dipped our toe into yet? Like, what if this was really just the beginning? And that's the other part of being a conscious horse, conscious rider facilitator and exploring horses from a space of consciousness is it's always new. It's always the beginning. It's always a new question. And there's so many possibilities available. So many possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, I want to say like, hey, give a chance to your being, and like horses is one possibility, and it's this amazing possibility. And I just want to like add like, a little bit of a marketing advertisement tool over here. You're going to be in India in less than 2 weeks to be recording. And yes, can't wait. And you have a 1 day, like an introduction to the conscious horse, conscious rider class on the 21st of August in this beautiful place, which is actually like it's in Mumbai. And those of you who are from Mumbai, are from India, or at least have heard of Mumbai, it can seem like this big intensity, but this place that where we're going to be having the class, it's this piece of land that seems like, oh my God, this is not a part of the city. And I'm very excited for that. And then the following weekend, the 24th and 25th, you have the full 2 day class in Kolkata. Is there anything you want to say about these classes that are coming up, and how's your world with them?
Oh, I can't wait. I always, I love traveling the world because, I've done a couple of conscious horse, conscious rider classes here, but I've done more sort of outside of Australia. And, that's my dream, is to be able to work with people and horses all around the world, because even though horses are similar all around the world, they're also very, very different. So you come to somewhere like India, and even the difference between, Bombay, Mumbai, and down to Kolkata, it's like you're dealing with a different energy, like a different demand, a different request of why that class is there and what's going to show up. So I've never facilitated a conscious horse, conscious rider class that was the same as another one. Like, it's really about the people that show up and the places they want to go, because the horses will go wherever we want to go. They're like, they don't have a point of view if we explore, the deepest depths and realms of your being, like you said, or if it's more like, you want to learn to be a better rider with a bigger zone of awareness when you're riding your horses. Like, nothing's untouched in these classes. We can go anywhere that's available, and anywhere that the people that are showing up to the class ask to go. So I'm always excited to see who shows up and just how far we can get. So, and the land, the horses, the different horses around the world. I'm coming to 2 places I haven't yet been in. So I'm so excited to just see what shows up. And then a lot of the time we work in stables and facilities where they have no idea what we do. So we also get to change the people. We get to change the horses, because a lot of them, they're working horses. It's a working stable where they're kept in a stall and they're brought out to be worked a couple of times a day. They probably have all manner of people riding them that may not be the most conscious beings sitting on their back doing all these things with them. So I also love what we get to contribute to the horses as well, and see their world start to change and reignite the true essence of what a horse is, which is a very free and very conscious being. So yeah, I can't wait. I'm so excited. I really can't wait.
Wow. So on that note, my friend, thank you so much. This was such a beautiful conversation, and I really can't wait for everything that's in store the next 2 weeks. It's going to be pretty full on with everything that's coming up. And
it's India. Of course it's going to be full on. India doesn't do not full on. It's like, the moment I get off the plane, I've got to just remind my body, it's okay. We're in India. Things are a little different here than my little sleepy Sunshine Coast home in Queensland, Australia. So, but I love it. You guys have an energy that is so different from anywhere else in the world, and your horses are very different too. So I'm like, let's go. What can we create in this world? What are the possibilities? What can horses show us? What can we show them? It's like, yeah, truly, 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 what else is possible?
let's go. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you for taking over my podcast and interviewing me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you guys for listening. And hopefully I'll see you in India or somewhere in the world. And if you can't get to one of my classes, there's a bunch of conscious horse, conscious rider facilitators around the world. So we always post some links for you to find things, but I know they're going on all around the world. So I would invite you to reach out and start exploring a little bit more of the world of consciousness and horses. Thank you so much, Mr. Dattu. Thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.